While Mafia boss threw away delicacies, his maid dug through trash so her sick son could live another day. But Julian Thorne did not know that yet. All he knew, standing on the balcony of his penthouse that pierced the clouds above the city, was that someone was stealing from him. And Julian Thorne did not tolerate thieves. The dinner party had ended an hour ago. The air in the penthouse was still thick with the scent of roasted duck, truffle oil, and the lingering perfume of socialites who only smiled when they wanted something. Julian leaned against the cold glass of the balcony door, watching the reflection of the room behind him rather than the city lights below. He was 42, a man built of sharp angles and sharp pursuits, who had turned a small inheritance into a global logistics empire by noticing the details everyone else missed. He noticed when a contract had a loophole. He noticed when a partner was lying. And tonight, he noticed the bag. Elena. That was her name. She was a quiet thing, a shadow in a gray uniform who moved through his life without making a sound. She had been with him for 6 months, recommended by an agency that swore by her discretion. She was efficient. She was invisible. But tonight, as the caterers packed up their equipment and the guests filtered out into the elevators, Julian had seen her. She was in the service corridor, near the rear exit. She was not carrying her usual small purse. She was clutching a heavy, black plastic trash bag against her chest. She looked terrified. Her eyes, usually cast down in deference, were darting left and right like a trapped animal. When she saw the head of the catering staff approach, she quickly hid the bag behind a cart of dirty linens. Julian took a sip of his scotch, the amber liquid burning his throat. He did not intervene. Not yet. He watched. Mr. Thorne. Julian turned. It was his personal assistant, Marcus, holding a tablet. The cleanup crew is finishing. The inventory check is complete. We're missing 2 silver serving spoons from the antique set and a crystal decanter stopper. Julian's eyes narrowed. Is that so? Yes, sir. The catering manager is apologizing profusely. He says they might have been swept up in the trash by accident. Accidents are the excuses of the incompetent, Marcus. Julian set his glass down on a marble coaster with a deliberate click. Dismiss the catering staff. Tell them I'll deduct the cost from their fee. But tell Elena to stay. Elena, sir. The maid. Her shift ended 10 minutes ago. Has she left the building? Marcus checked his watch. She usually takes the service elevator to the basement garage. She walks to the bus stop on 4th. Julian walked to the closet and pulled out a dark trench coat. He was not a man who enjoyed physical confrontations, but he enjoyed being played for a fool even less. He had seen the way she clutched that bag. It was not trash. No one hugged garbage like it was a lifeline. She had the silver. Maybe she had more. Maybe she had been skimming from him for months, small things, trinkets, information. Sir. Marcus looked confused as Julian buttoned the coat. Do you want me to call security? No, Julian said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous rumble. If we call security, she'll deny it. She'll say it was a mistake. She'll cry. I do not want tears, Marcus. I want the truth. And I want to see exactly where my property is going. He walked past his assistant, grabbing a set of keys from the side table. Not the keys to the limousine, but the keys to a nondescript sedan he kept for site inspections at his factories. Go home, Marcus. I'll handle the staff. Julian took the private elevator down, bypassing the lobby and exiting directly into the cold, damp garage. He sat in the dark car, the engine silent, watching the service exit. He did not have to wait long. The heavy steel door creaked open. Elena slipped out. She was wearing a thin, worn-out coat that looked insufficient for the biting November wind. She still had the bag. It was bulky, misshapen, and heavy enough that it pulled her left shoulder down as she walked. She did not head for the bus stop. She began to walk briskly towards the alleyway that cut behind the luxury high-rise. Julian started the car, leaving the lights off. He felt a surge of cold anger. It was not about the money. The spoons were worth perhaps $2,000, a rounding error in his daily ledger. It was the audacity. He paid her well. He provided a safe environment. And in return, she looked him in the eye, said, "Good evening, Mr. Thorne," and walked out the back door with his possessions. He had a choice. He could honk the horn, flash the lights, and have security drag her back inside. He could fire her on the spot and threaten police action. It would be easy. It would be clean. But Julian Thorne had not built an empire by being clean. He wanted to know the network. Was she selling to a fence? Was she meeting a boyfriend who put her up to this? If he fired her now, she'd just disappear and steal from the next billionaire. No. He needed to see the transaction. He needed to catch her red-handed, destroying any chance she had of lying her way out of it. He eased the car out of the parking spot, the tires rolling silently over the concrete. He would follow her to the ends of the earth if he had to. Tonight, the predator in him was awake. He was not just a CEO, he was a hunter, and he had caught the scent of betrayal. Elena turned the corner, glancing over her shoulder. Julian ducked his head, but she did not see him. She looked desperate, her pace quickening into a near run. "Run," Julian whispered to the empty car, his grip tightening on the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. "Run as fast as you can. You're only leading me to the evidence." He pressed the accelerator, sliding into the traffic, keeping one car length behind the woman who was about to lose everything. The city changed as they moved away from the financial district. The towering glass skyscrapers, reflecting the moonlight like diamonds, gave way to brick apartment blocks, then to warehouses with broken windows, and finally to the sprawl. The sprawl was the part of the city Julian's logistics trucks avoided. It was a maze of crumbling concrete, flickering streetlights, and potholes deep enough to swallow a tire. The air here did not smell like rain, it smelled of wet ash and stagnation. Julian's sedan looked out of place here, even though it was modest. He kept his distance, his eyes locked on Elena's figure. She had stopped running. She was trudging now, the heavy bag bumping against her leg with every step. She had been walking for 40 minutes. She had not taken a bus. She had not called a cab. She was walking to save the fare. Dedicated to the profit margins, Julian muttered, a cynical sneer curling his lip. "I can appreciate the hustle, even if it is criminal." She turned down a narrow street lined with shuttered storefronts. Julian slowed the car to a crawl, killing the headlights completely. The ambient glow of the city was enough to see her silhouette. She was not going to a pawn shop. The pawn shops were 3 blocks back. She was not meeting a fence on the corner. She stopped in front of a dilapidated supermarket. The sign above the door was broken, reading only, "Supermarket." The windows were barred. It was closed for the night. Julian watched, confused. Why stop here? Was this the drop? Elena looked around again, scanning the empty street. Seeing no one, she did not go to the front door. She went around the side, towards the loading bay where the large industrial dumpster sat in the shadow of a brick wall. Julian parked the car against the curb and stepped out. The wind hit him instantly, carrying the scent of rotting vegetables and gasoline. He buttoned his trench coat to his chin, his Italian leather shoes crunching softly on the grit and broken glass that littered the sidewalk. He moved like a ghost, sticking to the shadows, approaching the corner of the building. What he saw made him pause, but only for a second. Elena had placed the heavy bag she stole from his house on the wet ground. She was not leaving it there. She was opening the lid of the supermarket's dumpster. She was small, and the lid was heavy, made of rusted steel. She struggled, grunting with effort, until she managed to prop it open. Then, she climbed up onto a wooden pallet and leaned into the dumpster. Julian's lip curled in disgust. Was she hiding the stolen goods in the trash to retrieve later? A dead drop. It was clever. Police would not look in a dumpster full of rot. Or perhaps she was looking for something else. He watched as she pulled out a clear plastic bag from the dumpster. She held it up to the dim streetlight. It contained vegetables, wilted lettuce, bruised apples, carrots that had gone soft. Rejects. Garbage. She placed the vegetables into her own bag, the one she had taken from his house. Julian felt a flash of irritation. This did not make sense. If she was stealing silver, why was she mixing it with trash? Unless the bag from his house was empty to begin with. No. He had seen the weight of it. She leaned back in, reaching deeper. Her uniform, the pristine gray dress she wore in his penthouse, was getting smeared with grime. She did not seem to care. She was frantic. She found a package of bread rolls, the plastic torn, likely expired. She added them to her hoard. Julian stepped out from the shadows. He had seen enough. The ambiguity was annoying him. He wanted the confrontation. He wanted the confession. Working late, Elena. His voice cut through the silence of the alley like a whip crack. Elena screamed. It was a short, sharp sound of pure terror. She spun around on the pallet, losing her balance. She slipped and fell hard onto the wet asphalt, the bag she had been guarding so carefully tumbling from her grasp. She scrambled backward, her hands scraping against the rough ground, until her back hit the rusted metal of the dumpster. When she looked up and saw Julian standing there, illuminated by the flickering street lamp, the color drained from her face completely. She looked like she was seeing the devil himself. Mr. Thorne, she stammered, her voice trembling so hard the words barely formed. I did not. Did not what? Julian stepped closer, towering over her. He did not offer her a hand. He looked down at her with cold, imperious judgment. Did not think I'd notice. Did not think I'd follow you into this sewer you call a neighborhood. No, please, sir, I can explain, she gasped, tears already mixing with the dirt on her cheeks. She tried to reach for the bag she had dropped. Julian was faster. He stepped on the bag, pinning it to the ground with his expensive shoe. Do not touch it, he commanded. We're going to see exactly what you thought was worth losing your job for. 2 silver spoons, Marcus said. A crystal stopper. What else, Elena? My watch. Jewelry from the guest bedroom. Did you take the silverware to sell, or did you just want a souvenir of a life you'll never have? I did not take any silver. Elena cried out, a sound of desperate honesty that almost made Julian pause. Almost. I swear on my life, Mr. Thorne, I never took money or silver. Then what is in the bag? Julian shouted, his patience snapping. The environment, the smell, the cold, it was all making him furious. Why sneak out the back? Why run? Why hide it? Please, do not open it, she begged, reaching for his ankle. Please, sir, just fire me. Just let me go. Do not look. I am not just firing you, Julian hissed, bending down. He grabbed the knot of the black plastic bag. I am going to make sure you never work in this city again. I am going to expose you for the parasite you are. He ripped the bag open. He expected the clatter of metal. He expected the shine of silver. He expected the damning evidence of greed. Instead, the bag tore apart, and its contents spilled out onto the dirty, oil-stained asphalt of the alley. There was no silver. There were no jewels. A half-eaten roasted duck carcass tumbled out, sliding across the wet ground. A container of mashed potatoes, the lid cracked, spilled white mush. Stale artisanal rolls, hard as rocks. A handful of truffle chocolates that had been left on the dessert trays, now melted and squashed. And nestled among them, careful wrapped in napkins, were scraps of steak, the edges of the wagyu beef the guests had not finished, the fatty rinds, the pieces that had gone cold. It was garbage. It was the food the caterers had been instructed to scrape into the bins. Julian stared at the mess on the ground. The smell of expensive, spoiled food mixed with the rot of the dumpster. He froze, his hand still gripping the torn plastic. His mind tried to recalibrate. Garbage, he whispered, looking from the spilled leftovers to the woman cowering at his feet. You stole garbage. Elena was sobbing now, deep, chest-heaving sobs that she tried to stifle with her dirty hands. She looked at the spilled food not with shame, but with heartbreak. She looked at the muddy roasted duck as if someone had destroyed a diamond necklace. I'm sorry, she choked out. I'm so sorry. I know it's stealing. I know it's yours. But you told them to throw it away. I heard you tell Marcus. Clear it all out. I could not let it go to the compactor. Julian slowly straightened up. The anger was draining out of him, replaced by a cold, confusing numbness. This did not fit the profile. Thieves stole value. This was pathetic. Why? Julian asked. His voice was not shouting anymore, but it was hard. You work for me. I pay you a salary. It's above market rate. Why are you digging in dumpsters and stealing table scraps? Do you have a drug habit, Elena? Is that it? You spend your money on a fix and eat from the trash. It was the only logical explanation. The neighborhood, the desperation, the secrecy. Elena shook her head violently. No. Never. I do not do that. Then explain it to me. Julian snapped, gesturing at the mess. Because right now, I see a woman who has access to my home, my security, my life, behaving like a rat. If you are not an addict, what are you? Elena wiped her face, smearing grime across her forehead. She looked up at him, and for the first time, her eyes held a spark of defiance. I have a son, she whispered. Julian blinked. A child. He's 7. His name is Leo. She took a ragged breath. He is very sick. The damp in the apartment, his lungs, the doctors say he needs special medicine. Inhalers. Steroids. Antibiotics. She pointed a shaking finger at the spilled food. The medicine costs $400 a month. My rent is $600. My salary, every penny goes to the pharmacy and the landlord. I have not bought groceries in 3 weeks, Mr. Thorne. I eat water and flour. But Leo, he needs protein. He needs to be strong to fight the infection. She reached out and picked up a piece of the Wagyu beef from the pavement, wiping the dirt off it with her sleeve. This meat, it's soft. He can chew it. It has iron. I take the bread for his breakfast. I take the vegetables from the dumpster to make soup. She looked him in the eye, clutching the dirty piece of meat. I'm not stealing from you to get rich. I'm stealing so my son does not die of hunger while he waits for his medicine to work. Julian stood there, the wind whipping his trench coat around his legs. He looked at the woman. He looked at the evidence. A cynic's voice in his head, the voice that had kept him safe in business for 20 years, whispered, it's a lie. A sob story. She's playing you. Show me, Julian said. Elena blinked. What? Take me to him. Julian stepped back, motioning to the dark street. If you retelling the truth, take me to your son. Right now. I see a not. It's not a place for you. It's, if you want to keep your job, and if you want to stay out of a jail cell for theft, you will take me to him. Julian's face was unreadable. Because if there is no boy, or if I find a boyfriend shooting up heroin on the couch, I will call the police myself. Elena hesitated, fear warring with desperation. Then, she nodded. She scrambled to her feet, gathering what little salvageable food she could back into the torn bag. Okay, she whispered. Okay. But please, do not scare him. They walked in silence. Julian refused to drive. He wanted to walk the path she walked. They went 2 blocks deeper into the darkness, turning into an alley that was even worse than the supermarket's. Rats skittered away as they approached. Elena stopped at a basement door of a building that looked like it had been condemned years ago. The windows were boarded up. The smell of mold was overpowering, even from the outside. She unlocked the door with a rusted key. Stay close, she murmured. The stairs are broken. Julian followed her down into the earth. The air grew colder as they descended. It was a damp, bone-chilling cold that settled in the lungs. She opened the door at the bottom. The apartment was a single room. The floor was concrete. The walls were stained with black mold that bloomed like cancerous flowers. There was no furniture, only a pile of mattresses in the corner and a small camping stove. But Julian did not look at the walls. He looked at the mattress. A small boy lay there, buried under a mountain of old blankets. He was tiny, his skin translucent and pale. His breathing was the loudest thing in the room, a wet, rattling wheeze that sounded like a saw cutting through rusted metal. Elena dropped the bag and ran to the mattress. "Leo. Baby. I'm home." The boy stirred. He opened his eyes. They were dark, sunken, and fever-bright. He tried to sit up, but a coughing fit seized him, racking his small body so violently that Julian winced. It sounded painful. It sounded terminal. When the coughing subsided, the boy looked past his mother and saw the tall man in the expensive coat standing in the shadows. "Mommy," the boy rasped, his voice thin as paper. "Who is the giant?" Elena stroked his hair, her hands trembling. This is my boss, Leo. Mr. Thorne. He gave me a ride. Did you bring the feast?" Leo asked, his eyes lighting up with a heartbreaking innocence. "From the castle." Elena looked back at Julian, shame burning in her cheeks. Then she reached into the bag and pulled out the container of mashed potatoes and the piece of steak she had wiped off. "Yes, baby," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I brought the feast. Look. The king sent his best meat just for you." Julian watched the scene unfold with a horrifying clarity. He watched the boy, Leo, sit up with trembling excitement. He watched the child take the piece of cold, dirt-streaked steak that had been on the alley floor moments ago and bite into it as if it were ambrosia. "It's so good," Leo mumbled, chewing slowly because he lacked the strength to do it quickly. "Mommy, did you eat?" "I ate at the castle, baby." "You eat." The lie hung in the damp air. Julian felt a physical blow to his chest. It was not pity. Pity was cheap. This was shame. A hot, searing shame that burned through his cynicism. He looked around the room. He saw the medicine on a crate, an empty inhaler and a bottle of generic syrup that was mostly sugar. He saw the bucket in the corner that served as a sink. He realized that the castle the boy spoke of was his penthouse. The king was him. And the feast was the garbage he had ordered to be destroyed because it was not perfect enough for his guests. The boy looked at Julian, smiling with sauce-stained lips. "Thank you, Mr. King. The food is magic." Julian Thorne had negotiated billion-dollar mergers. He had fired executives without blinking. He had stood in boardrooms and crushed competitors. But standing in this basement, looking at a dying boy thanking him for trash, Julian Thorne broke. The wall he had built between himself and the world, the wall that said everyone was a thief, everyone was a liar, everyone was out to get him, crumbled into dust. He did not say a word. He turned around and walked out the door. "Mr. Thorne." Elena called out, panic rising in her voice. "Mr. Thorne, please." She thought he was leaving to call the police. She thought he was disgusted. Julian climbed the broken stairs, emerging into the rainy night. He did not go to his car. He pulled out his phone. His hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from adrenaline. He dialed a number. "This is Dr. Eris's private line. Who is this?" a sleepy voice answered. "Eris, it's Julian Thorne. I do not care what time it is. I need an ambulance. A private one. From your clinic. Equipped for pediatric respiratory distress. Advanced life support. Julian. Is it you? Are you injured?" "Not for me," Julian barked, pacing the alley. "I am at 402 East 9th Street. The basement. You have 15 minutes. If you are not here, I buy your hospital and fire you. Do you understand? I'm on my way." Julian hung up. He stood in the rain for a moment, letting the water soak his expensive coat. He took a deep breath of the foul air, forcing himself to taste the reality of what he had ignored. He went back down. Elena was holding Leo, rocking him. She looked up terrified as Julian re-entered. "Pack his things," Julian said. His voice was no longer the voice of the boss. It was the voice of the men who fixed problems. "What?" "Pack his things. Whatever you need. The toy. The blanket. Leave the rest. Where are you taking us? Please, sir, he's sick, he ca not go to jail. Julian crossed the room. He knelt down on the dirty concrete, ruining the knees of his tailored trousers. He looked Elena in the eye. You are not going to jail, Elena. You are going home. He looked at Leo. Leo, do you like the castle? The boy nodded, eyes wide. Good. Because the heating in the castle is much better than here. And the kitchen has fresh food. Not leftovers. Fresh. Are we visiting? Leo asked. No, Julian said, his throat tight. You moving in. Mr. Thorne, I ca not, Elena wept, shaking her head. I ca not pay you back. I ca not, you do not owe me anything, Julian interrupted, his voice fierce. I owe you. I owe you for every day you worked for me while living in this hell. I owe you for every meal I threw away while your son starved. He reached out and gently lifted the boy into his arms. Leo was light, far too light for a 7-year-old. He felt like a bird made of hollow bones. The boy rested his head against Julian's wet coat, trusting him instantly. The chariot is coming, Julian whispered to the boy. When the ambulance arrived, flashing lights cutting through the gloom of the alley, neighbors peeked out from behind barred windows. They watched as the rich man in the ruined suit carried the sick boy out, followed by the weeping mother. Julian rode in the ambulance with them. He watched the paramedics hook Leo up to oxygen. He watched the color return to the boy's cheeks. He watched Elena hold her son's hand, her face a mask of disbelief and relief. He took out his phone and sent a text to Marcus. Clear the guest wing. Set up a pediatric room. Order a full grocery restock, everything. And cancel my meetings for tomorrow. I have a more important appointment. With whom, sir? Marcus replied instantly. Julian looked at the boy sleeping peacefully under the sterile blanket, and then at the mother who had braved dumpsters and wrath to save him. With my family, Julian typed. He put the phone away. For the first time in his life, Julian Thorne did not feel like a man guarding a hoard of silver. He felt like a man who had finally found something worth protecting. The thief had not taken anything from him. She had given him back his humanity. And that was a debt he would spend the rest of his life repaying.